Wednesday, May 22nd. Last stop. After an hour, Sheeran didn't agree with my assessment that B had been gone a long time. She figured he'd just run into someone he knew, and Michael characteristically didn't think it was his place to have an opinion, so I went looking on my own. The compartments were divided from the corridors by partitions with glass inserts, so it was easy enough to see who was there, who was where, and B wasn't anywhere in the front part of the train. A few compartments were empty and dark, and I saw no reason to check these till I ran out of other places to check. I realized he was almost as short on sleep as I was, and after his difficult evening in Stuttgart, he might well decide to stretch out on an empty seat for a nap. When I finally found him, I thought I was right, but I was wrong. He was stretched out on an empty seat all right, but he wasn't asleep. He was dead, eyes open, with a bullet hole in his left temple. Maybe someday I'll write down what I went through in that minute, but not now. I think I came close to doing what used to be meant by losing your mind, before those words just became another cliched synonym for going crazy. I knew I had to throw the emergency switch and stop the train, as little as I wanted to. There didn't seem to be any choice about that, though of course lots of passengers thought differently. It was a mess, of course, a nightmare. At first I thought I'd be executed on the spot. Eventually the conductor understood about the corpse. Eventually Michael arrived and took over as interpreter. Eventually some police arrived, it seemed like hours later. Then waves of police arrived, each with the same questions. I was handcuffed twice and nearly a third time. The train was eventually moved on into Hanover, just a few miles ahead. The night went on and on and on. Finally Michael and Sheeran convinced the police that I was a very improbable murderer, and they let me go after confiscating my passport. By this time it was dawn. Michael found a cabbie willing to drive us to Radnau, and we got out of that place. I slept till 8 p.m., went downstairs for some dinner, and faxed Father Lufra a note explaining what had happened. One police official with a good command of English had told me to call if I recollected anything that wasn't in my statement. I called him and told him about seeing Herr Reichmann on the train platform at Frankfurt. How do you know he wasn't just meeting someone on the train? I don't. But people who are meeting someone don't come forward the way he did. They stand back so they can see people getting off down the whole length of the train. That's well observed, the policeman agreed. So let's say he got on the train. You think he had a reason to want to harm your friend? No, not at all. Then what's the point? You said to call if I remembered anything. That's what I'm doing. Good, I appreciate that. By the way, the tests on your hands were negative for traces of gunpowder. That's news to you, but not to me, I told him. I already knew there was no gunpowder on my hands. Can I get my passport back? In a day or two. We just want to be able to talk to you if we need to. We said goodbye. I felt half dead myself. I didn't want to think, I didn't want to remember, I didn't want to do anything. I got out the bottle of scotch and had a drink, but I didn't even want to do that. I stretched out on the bed in my clothes, closed my eyes, and slept for 10 straight hours. Thursday, May 23rd. Radnau, Day 6. Father Lufra phoned at 8 in the morning and opened the conversation by telling me, in a tone of mild reproof, that it was midnight where he was. I didn't ask you to call, I snapped. There was a lengthy silence as he evidently decided that the wisest course was to say nothing to that. When are you coming home, he finally asked. I don't know. The police are holding my passport. Why? To keep me in Germany, obviously. They don't have Adderley's killer? As far as I know, they don't have a clue, much less a suspect. Believe me, I'm not in their confidence. What have you told them about your mission there? Not a goddamn thing. All they want to know is, did you have a fight with him? Were you carrying a gun? Did you shoot him? They don't have the slightest interest in my life story. Maybe they will someday, but not now. Shall I get you a lawyer? Not at this point. Aside from the fact that I found the body, they have no reason to think I had anything to do with his death. Father Lufra pondered all this for a while and said with the comfortable certainty of someone 4,000 miles away, They can't keep you there indefinitely. I'll explain that to them. What's the hurry? No hurry, it's just that there's something more to do. It's just that there's nothing more to do, so I assumed you'd be eager to get back home. I wondered why he thought I needed to have this explained to me, but let it go. I'll be in touch when I know more, I said. Do you need anything? I've got American Express and Visa Gold. How could I need anything? Jared, you're beginning to alarm me. This has not been a fun time. It will soon be over, Father Lufra said, and we left it at that. I showered, dressed, had breakfast, and went for a walk, something I'd never done in this town in broad daylight. It wasn't a place you could get lost in. It had been designed with too much Teutonic logic for that. By the merest chance, I eventually found myself in the same street as Gustl Meyer's shop of leftovers and cast-offs. The old man looked at me with surprise when I walked in. I asked if he knew what had happened to Bee, and he said he'd read about it in the paper. I explained that I didn't have enough German to read the paper, so I didn't know whether the police had arrested anyone. "Oh, they won't find anyone to arrest," the old man assured me. "Why is that?" He shrugged elaborately. "Charles was a man who was bound to be killed." He seemed to think this explained it. Back to the burrow. After lunch, I went over to the theater, hoping Sheeran and Michael would be there. They were. So were Frau Hartmann, the American teenager Bonnie, and the Teetles. I wasn't expecting anyone to be particularly glad to see me, and no one was. Except for Sheeran, who was sitting in Bee's chair. Everyone was in his or her usual place. Maybe they wanted at least that much continuity. No one was talking. I sat down and asked them what the prevailing theory was, who killed Bee, and why. They looked at me blankly except for Sheeran, who said, "I wouldn't call it a theory. The prevailing feeling seems to be that Bee would still be alive if you hadn't come." "I'm glad it's not a theory. You recognize the fallacy involved. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. It happened after, so it happened because. According to this reason, marriage is the cause of every divorce." "Don't lecture us, Jared." "I won't lecture you if you won't saddle me with Bee's death." "Why do you think he was killed?" This was from Michael. "I don't know. The possibilities are too numerous and I have no way of narrowing them down. Obviously, a lot of people were upset with what he was saying." "This wasn't done by someone who just generally didn't like what Bee was saying," Sheeran said. "This was done by someone who knew Bee would be on that particular train, someone who got on that particular train to kill him. Or someone who got on that particular train to kill whoever was available. If he got on the train to kill at random, why did he only kill Bee? I don't know. Maybe one victim was enough. Maybe no one else was handy the way Bee was handy." Bonnie said, "What's your boss's name, the guy who sent you here?" "Father Lufra?" "Maybe Father Lufra had him killed." "Why would he do that?" "Didn't he send you here to find out if Bee was the Antichrist?" "Well, just to keep it simple, suppose he did. Then what?" "Then maybe he decided Bee was the Antichrist." I shook my head. He certainly couldn't have decided that on the basis of what he heard from me. And even if he had, he wouldn't have had responded by having been murdered. You watch too much television, Bonnie. Father Lufra is an archaeologist and a psychiatrist, not a mafia don. Bonnie smirked as if I was being incredibly naive, or deliberately stupid. No one seemed to have anything else to say. Sitting there in the midst of all these silent people, I began to wonder if I'd interrupted a meeting of some kind, a meeting to which I'd not been invited. I decided this was something I had to know and was pondering how to phrase the question when a medley of footsteps sounded on the circular staircase from above. I looked around to see if newcomers were expected, but had the feeling they weren't. Everyone held tight until a troop of 5 finally emerged. They were assorted ages, teens to middle age, dressed in a ragtag style ranging from early hippie to late punk. They paused on the staircase to give us a good long look as if we were museum specimens. Then, after passing a look back and forth among themselves, they clambered the rest of the way down and made their way through the jumble to where we were assembled. "Have we come right?" asked the leader, a bearded agent in his 40s. "We are from Sweden and we are told to go to the theater in Radnau and down in the basement, and there they are meeting." As we continued to stare dumbly, he gave each of us in turn a smiling, hopeful look. Finally, still smiling, though now somewhat doubtfully, he said, "Which of you is the one they call Bee?" Since no one else seemed inclined to, I took it upon myself to say, "Bee is not here." "Oh, shut up, you stupid man," Sheeran said. Then standing up and turning to the newcomers, she spoke 3 words that I instantly knew were going to rip my life to pieces. "I am Bee."